Welcome to Unexplained Encounters. Tonight, we delve into the chilling legend of the Stone of Destiny. Hidden in the annals of Scottish history, this mysterious stone is said to carry a curse that has haunted those who dare to uncover its secrets. What happens when an ambitious young historian takes his obsession with the stone too far? Prepare yourselves for a journey into the unknown, where reality and nightmare collide, and the ancient past comes to claim the present. This is the curse of the Stone of Destiny. John McPherson was a graduate student at the University of Edinburgh, studying history and archaeology. Ever since he started at the university, he had been fascinated by the royal history of Scotland. The towering walls of Edinburgh Castle, the imposing stone towers, and the rich history they symbolized drew him in, especially the mysterious Stone of Destiny. This ancient stone was said to have unparalleled historical significance. According to Scottish history, it was a symbol of the coronation of every Scottish king, until it was taken by King Edward I of England in 1296 and transported to London. For centuries, the Stone of Destiny remained at Westminster Abbey, until a group of 4 Scottish students secretly stole it in 1950 and brought it back to Scotland, sparking widespread attention and controversy. John's thesis was centered around this stone. He began borrowing books about the stone, particularly Ian Hamilton's The Stone of Destiny, in search of the truth, which detailed the events surrounding the 1950 theft. This book deepened John's curiosity about the story behind the stone. Another book, The Stone of Scone, A History of the Coronation Stone, delved into the stone's symbolic role in Scottish and English history, and even mentioned several mysterious legends associated with it. When John mentioned his topic to his advisor, the professor encouraged him to continue his research and suggested he visit Edinburgh Castle to observe the Stone of Destiny in person. John's plan was not just to write a historical thesis, but to uncover the hidden, unresolved mysteries behind the Stone of Destiny. The professor recommended several books, some of which hinted at the stone carrying a curse, which only fueled John's interest further. At first, everything was normal. John began his research on the Stone of Destiny with genuine academic curiosity. Each day, he would spend hours in the university library, poring over books and ancient manuscripts, trying to compile a comprehensive history of the stone's significance and its modern-day impact. However, as he delved deeper, John began to uncover some unsettling stories. Some of the old texts suggested that the Stone of Destiny was more than just a coronation symbol. Ancient writings alluded to the stone being used in ancient rituals, and, in some cases, cursed. John's focus gradually shifted from purely academic research to something much more personal. His nights grew longer as he began obsessing over the smallest details, poring over the same passages again and again, convinced that there was something deeper to be found. His room became a cluttered mess of books, notes, and scribbled theories. Sleep became secondary as his obsession with the stone grew stronger. One night, while reading in his room, John noticed something strange. The lights in his room flickered, and a cold chill ran through the air, despite the heating being on. He stood up and walked to the window, pulling back the curtains to peer out into the night. The streets were empty, and all was still, but the feeling of unease remained, nagging at the back of his mind. John returned to his desk, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the cold. He wrapped himself in a blanket and tried to concentrate, but something was wrong. The text in front of him seemed to blur, as if the letters were being erased from the pages. A growing sense of dread began to overtake him, and he couldn't explain why. As the days passed, John's obsession with the Stone of Destiny deepened. He started seeing strange things that he couldn't explain. It wasn't just in his dreams anymore. It was happening during the day. He would see fleeting shadows out of the corner of his eye, hear strange noises at night, and feel a constant chill in his apartment, even though the heating was always on. But the worst of it came during one of his lectures. It was a quiet afternoon, and John was sitting in class, listening to the professor discuss the importance of coronation symbols in Scottish history. But as the lecture continued, John found it harder and harder to focus. His vision started to blur, and the professor's voice became distant, almost like a whisper in the background. He glanced around the room and felt his heart skip a beat. In the far corner of the room, John saw something that shouldn't have been there. A shadowy figure, tall and ominous, standing in the corner. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, but when he looked again, the figure was clearer. And then it moved. Slowly, the figure took shape. It was him, but not him as he was now. It was him as an ancient Scottish king, dressed in royal robes with blood dripping down his face. Suddenly, several soldiers appeared, charging toward the figure with raised swords. John watched in horror as they slashed at his doppelganger, blood splattering across the room. He wanted to scream, to run, but he was frozen in place, unable to move or make a sound. Just as quickly as it had appeared, the vision was gone. The professor was still lecturing, and the students around him seemed unaware of the terror John had just experienced. Breathing heavily, John wiped his forehead and realized his hands were shaking. What was happening to him? John's nightmares became more frequent, and with each passing night, they grew more terrifying. Every time he closed his eyes, he would find himself standing on the windswept plains of ancient Scotland, surrounded by mist and the ominous red glow of the Stone of Destiny. In these dreams, the stone was no longer a simple relic. It pulsed with a life of its own, calling to him, beckoning him to come closer. In one particularly vivid dream, John found himself walking through the ruins of an ancient Scottish castle. The walls were crumbling, and the air was thick with the smell of decay. As he wandered through the darkened corridors, he came across a large chamber where the Stone of Destiny sat, bathed in a crimson light. Around the stone, ghostly figures appeared, ancient kings and warriors, their faces gaunt and twisted with pain. They spoke in whispers, their voices blending together in a haunting chant that echoed through the chamber. John felt an overwhelming urge to reach out and touch the stone, as if something inside him was drawing him closer to it. But as soon as his hand came near, the ground beneath him gave way, and he fell into a bottomless pit of darkness. John woke up in a cold sweat, his heart racing. But the fear didn't end there. As the days went on, he began to experience the strange phenomena from his dreams in his waking life. Objects in his apartment would move on their own. He would hear distant voices calling his name, even when he was alone. His reflection in the mirror seemed delayed, as if it was moving just a split second behind him. The line between dream and reality was beginning to blur, and John was losing control. John's mental state deteriorated rapidly. His once meticulously kept apartment became chaotic, with papers strewn everywhere and books left open on every surface. His obsession with the Stone of Destiny consumed him, and he barely left his room. His parents, growing increasingly concerned, attempted to intervene. One night, his father knocked on his door, calling out to him, but received no response. Worried, his father opened the door and found John sitting motionless at his desk, staring blankly at the wall. His eyes were wide, but they held no focus. "John?" his father asked cautiously, stepping into the room. As he moved closer, John's gaze slowly shifted to him. But instead of seeing his father as he truly was, John saw something entirely different. A monstrous figure, its face twisted in anger and malice, with hollow black eyes and an open mouth, emitting a low, guttural growl. John recoiled in horror, falling backward off his chair and scrambling away from the figure he thought was trying to attack him. He was too terrified to even scream. The figure lurched forward, reaching out with clawed hands. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the hallucination vanished. His father was standing there, looking bewildered and worried. "John, what's wrong? What are you seeing?" his father asked, deeply concerned. But John couldn't answer. His heart raced as he struggled to make sense of what had just happened. The Stone of Destiny was no longer just a research project. It had seeped into his very being, twisting his perception of reality. John's parents were growing increasingly desperate. They could no longer ignore the toll his obsession was taking on his mind and well-being. After the terrifying incident with his father, they decided it was time to seek professional help. John's father made an appointment with a local psychologist, and soon after, John began attending therapy sessions. The psychologist listened intently as John described his dreams, hallucinations, and the overwhelming presence of the Stone of Destiny in his life. She explained that John was likely suffering from a combination of sleep deprivation, anxiety, and stress, all of which could manifest as vivid dreams and even hallucinations. But John wasn't convinced that it was merely stress. "These things feel so real," he argued during one session. "It's like the stone is alive, like it's watching me, controlling me." The psychologist reassured him, saying, "Our minds are powerful. Under intense pressure, they can create incredibly vivid and convincing illusions. But with time and treatment, we can help you regain control." Despite her words, the fear remained. John continued to take medication for his anxiety and attended regular therapy sessions. But the dreams persisted. Even though he tried to avoid all contact with books and research related to the Stone of Destiny, the visions continued to haunt him at night. He could still hear the whispers, still feel the cold presence of the stone lurking in the corners of his mind. Months passed, and although John continued his therapy and medication, the haunting presence of the Stone of Destiny never truly left him. It lingered at the edge of his mind, a constant shadow in his life. He avoided any further research on the stone, and yet the nightmares persisted. Each night he would dream of the stone, of the ancient kings and the blood that seemed to bind him to their fate. One night, as John lay in bed, exhausted from another sleepless night, he had the most vivid dream of all. He found himself once again in the ancient castle, standing before the Stone of Destiny. This time, the room was filled with a blinding red light. The stone seemed to pulse with energy, and the air was thick with tension. In the dream, John reached out to touch the stone, despite every instinct telling him to stop. As his fingers brushed against the cold surface, a deafening roar filled the room, and the ground beneath him shook violently. The figures of ancient kings appeared once more, their eyes hollow, their faces twisted with anger. "You cannot escape your fate," a voice boomed from the shadows. John jolted awake, gasping for breath, his heart pounding in his chest. He sat up, his body drenched in sweat. But even in the waking world, the words from the dream echoed in his mind, haunting him. Though his parents and doctors believed he was recovering, John knew deep down that the Stone of Destiny's curse was still with him. It had etched itself into his soul, a dark presence that would never truly leave. In the weeks that followed, John tried to rebuild his life. He stayed away from anything related to the Stone of Destiny, focusing on his recovery. He returned to his studies, but avoided anything to do with Scottish history or ancient relics. On the surface, it seemed like he was finally healing, but deep down, John knew that the curse had left a permanent mark on him. Every now and then, he would still wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, with the faint echo of the stone's whispers still lingering in his mind. The nightmares had lessened, but they never truly went away. John was no longer the man he used to be. The Stone of Destiny had changed him, and he would never be free of its shadow. No matter how hard he tried, the stone's influence was still there, lurking in the darkest corners of his mind, waiting for the right moment to resurface. As John gazed out of his window one evening, the faint red glow of the setting sun reminded him of the stone's eerie pulse. And in that moment, he knew he could never escape his fate. Thank you all for watching today's story. The Stone of Destiny may remain an enigmatic symbol of Scottish history, but as we've learned tonight, sometimes the past is better left undisturbed. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe to Unexplained Encounters. We'll continue bringing you more chilling tales that will leave you questioning the mysteries of the world around us. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.